Welcome back, everybody. This is Mike Badger with Pastured Poultry Talk, episode number 54, and I'm excited to have Paul Greive from Pasturebird on the show today. Paul's a partner in a Southern California farm that started just 5 years ago from 50 chicks, and they're rising quickly. You might even say they're taking flight. Anyway, my take from the interview with Paul is one of focus. You'll hear that word pop up in our conversation in a few different ways, but basically we're going to focus on the message. We focus on being the best. We focus on a product. We focus on the numbers. The farm grows broilers, but if you listen, you'll hear takeaways that you can apply to your egg, turkey, or other farm business. We also cover some ground on certifications and predators. And how did a startup pastured poultry farm deal with predators? Paul's conclusion provided a pivot point to profitability. By my count, Pasturebird is the largest pastured poultry farm in the country that is doing daily moves. There are some larger producers, but they rotate less frequently. And as you'll hear, the daily move is a critical marketing message for Paul. It's the basis for his differentiation. Now, I'm not interviewing Paul because he's a large producer. He's much more than numbers. His enthusiasm for the food he grows and the community he belongs to overshadows simple scale, at least by my count. Before we jump in and find out how Paul grew Pasturebird into the 100,000 bird pastured poultry producer that serves upscale restaurants and sports franchises, I want to take a moment and personally thank you for listening to the podcast. It means a lot to me. If you like this show, please consider a review on iTunes. And we have a growing Facebook group that I encourage you to join. It's the place I solicit show ideas and your input. Of course, you can reach me by email at mike@pasturedpoultrytalk.com. Now, without further ado, let's meet Paul.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. I'm excited. Been a long time members of APA, and we really enjoy being a part.
Cool. So let's start out with some of the background stuff here, and tell us what you're raising. I understand you're primarily right now pasture raised broilers, but you're doing two breeds. So can you walk us through kind of what you're raising, how much of each one, and maybe how you're housing them?
Yep. So first of all, we just started this 5 years ago. I was a normal person before. I had a desk job, and my brother, who's a high school teacher, and we just got sick and tired of paying a lot of extra money for these fancy labels coming out of factory farms, and we just figured we raise some in our backyard for ourselves, and it started to take off out here in Southern California. So we're raising two different breeds. We raise a Cornish cross. We also do a Freedom Ranger. We do all daily move pastured poultry, so we have Joel Salatin style houses, made out of metal though, on wheels, and then we also do the mobile range coop designed by Grady out there at Cobb Creek Farm.
Okay. And then, so how many Freedom Rangers are you doing in a year?
We do about 25,000 Freedom Rangers a year. We order 1,200 to 2,000 birds every 3 weeks. That's our program right now. And then Cornish, we're doing about 2,400 birds a week right now, so 125,000 or so. But it's going up pretty fast. We're getting a lot of good growth out here in our region.
What's the advantage here of doing the Freedom Rangers and versus the Cornish cross? Like, how are you separating those birds? Are they by market or channel, or who gets what?
Yep. So two really different programs. Our Freedom Rangers are on a certified organic soy-free feed. It takes us about 10 or 11 weeks to get them up to market. It's a real expensive bird to raise, but we do have a niche market out here that's willing to pay for it. We started, everything we did for the first 4 years was that Freedom Ranger, organic, soy-free. And we had so many chefs come to us throughout the 4 years that we started and said, hey, we really want to use your product, but it's too expensive for us. And we just kept saying no, over and over. And finally, we were approached by both the Lakers and the Dodgers almost at the same time within 2 weeks of each other. And we really wanted to work with those guys, and so we did a custom program for them. We did a Cornish cross on conventional feed, not certified organic or anything.
Right.
And we were able to still do a local pasture-raised poultry, daily move, really good for the soil, and didn't have to use any vaccines or antibiotics or drugs or any of that stuff. So it's still a really great program, but we could do it for half the price. And so that ended up working for wholesale accounts, and we started to add a lot of restaurants and butcher shops and stuff like that afterwards. Okay,
so it seems like right now, then you're not primarily, but you're heavily invested in the wholesale market. Not that the retail here isn't substantial, but
we are. Yeah, we're focusing on that wholesale market. Just we really enjoy the farming part of this, and retail is a small piece for sure, but we really see ourselves going forward as being wholesale pasture poultry producers.
Talk to me a little bit about then why your customers are loving pastured bird chicken. You talked about the market for the Freedom Rangers, and you talked about the other market for the wholesale and the sports teams that were approaching you. But what makes them seek out the pastured poultry, and then specifically from you?
I think in the last 10 years, there's just been a general increase of knowledge about what's happening with, industrial grown meat in general. And so we chose chicken as what we really wanted to focus on. And people know that, when they see free range, or when they see organic, or they see antibiotic free on those packages inside of a big grocery store, I think people are learning more and more that doesn't mean what the average consumer sort of thinks. Free range just means they have access to the outdoors, and it's pretty nebulous. It's just another term that they can stick on a factory farm a lot of times. So
right.
A lot of times we don't have to do marketing. We just find people that are already looking for our products. And what people love about pasturebird poultry is it's grown outside. And I think that that's the key differentiator, is that our birds don't have access to the outdoors. They live outside 24/7. And people really enjoy the fact that it's an environmental benefit instead of being an environmental detractor, and that these birds, it's not like they're just humanely handled or humanely slaughtered. I mean, they have the best life ever. They get to express, like Joel Salatin, and the chickenness of the chicken.
Right.
And they get to forage for grass and bugs and seeds and worms and flowers and weeds, and they have a good life, every single day of their lives. So I think that's what people really enjoy about it. Plus the health benefits of just a healthier chicken living outside.
Yeah, and you're moving your chickens every day?
Yeah, that's real important to us. For our broiler operation, we really hang our hats on the everyday move. Especially here, we do irrigated pastures, and it's just, we notice a big difference, in everyday move. The birds stay healthier, the pastures respond to that level of manure a lot better. We're scaled up to the point now where we have staff and stuff that we can use, so we're not working 7 days a week anymore. But
right.
That daily move is really important to us.
When you talk to people about the environmental benefits of pastured poultry, and I'm wondering, how do you, all that stuff you just said to me in like, a dozen sentences, how do you tie it all together? Like I'm curious. This is just something that I've been thinking about more lately. Like, pastured poultry is so many things.
Mm-hmm.
How do you tie that daily move together? The emphasis on feed, the soil impact, the soil regeneration, the nutrition of the bird. Do you find some people are more focused on one thing or the other, or do they just get the whole package? You say, here it is,
No, you can't give them the whole package, because, people usually care about one of three things. So we always say it's healthy for the land, for the animal, and the consumer. And then I kind of watch their face and I see which one they're going to cling to, and I'm happy to dive in on any one of those three that they're most excited about, But a lot of people don't care. If I say daily move, or if I say it's free range or whatever, they don't care that much about the environmental impact. But they really care about the health impact on, what they're feeding their kids. Or then you get other people that don't care so much about how, the animals are treated, or if it's humane, but they're environmentalists at their core, and they want to see that the land's being stewarded and it's filtering good groundwater and creating good air conditions and sequestering carbon, and we can have that conversation. But the easy way I always tie it together is just say, hey, it's regenerative and it's good for the land, the animal, and the consumer, and then I'll sort of go from there.
This is a direct to consumer business, right? You have to be
absolutely,
and then they're talking to them. So very cool. I did notice something, and you posted it to the Pastured Poultry Talk Facebook group here a little while ago, and it caught me by surprise. I didn't even know such a thing existed, and that was the certified wildlife friendly thing. Since we're talking about some marketing here, what is that, and why does it matter to what you're doing?
Okay, let me start with this. First of all, I'm the most anti-label guy probably that you're going to meet on your podcast. I think labels have single-handedly ruined the food system. They allow us to get away from just being transparent and saying, hey, come out and see your farm for yourself and see how your food's produced. But the reality is consumers do like labels, and so we were approached by this group called Certified Wildlife Friendly, and it seemed to be a good fit. They'll only certify pasture-based operations. They didn't really have too many chicken farms they were working with yet, but the idea is how are you managing your predators and your wildlife load? Well, we want to see wildlife all the time. So when we build these healthy ecosystems out here, especially with irrigation and no-till, perennial pastures, stuff like that, we see lots of deer and rabbits and even coyotes and stuff. They're coming through all the time, not to mention all the little critters and bugs and insects and stuff. But we wanted to take some credit for that, so we went through the audit process with Certified Wildlife Friendly. They have a sister label called Certified Predator Friendly. And basically we just went through our management practices and sort of talked about how we do things, and we didn't have to change anything. They were real excited, and they gave us their stamp, and it's kind of cool looking label that we're going to put on our packaging now.
So are they out there marketing their label as well, and finding channels for that for you as a certified farmer?
We'll see how that works out. They said that they're going to help us do a press release, but it's all still pretty fresh. So
gotcha.
I'll have to get back to you on that. I'll do an updated Facebook post if that happens.
Cool. Now I just want to go back here a little bit. So you've been at this for 5 years. How did you start? I think I remember seeing that basically you started with, you didn't start with 200,000 chickens. Or 100,000 chickens. You started with what, 50?
50 chicks. So, like I said, I was working a full-time job. We were sitting around my family of Easter 2012 and joking about getting some chickens. And my brother, Rob, he disappears from the room. He comes back about 10 minutes later and he says, "Oh yeah, hey, by the way, I just ordered 50 chicks. They're going to be here in 2 weeks, so we better figure out how to do this thing." And none of us had ever farmed before. We never even really thought about farming. My father-in-law had read some stuff and he was into it, but none of us have done any farming before. And we just got the birds, and we became instant fans of Joel Salatin, and I sort of I binged on his YouTube videos and got excited about the whole thing, and we put the birds outside and we used a Salatin pen to start, and we thought that we'd have 50 chickens for our family to eat. We had a big old family, so
right.
We put a couple things up on Facebook and Instagram and told some friends, and before we knew it, the birds were only about 4 weeks old, and we collected deposits on all of them. And my family was kind of mad because we didn't have any chicken to eat. So the next month we did 100, and then, same thing, and then 200, and then 500. And it really grew pretty quick. And at the time I was working a job as an accountant that I didn't like that much. So it wasn't too hard of a sell for me to just jump ship and go try to do this thing full time as soon as possible.
I always enjoy that because it seems like very few people in our community, the pasture poultry community, starts, at that super scale. I mean, I can think of one exception off the top of my head, but generally, that's the evolution. That's the growth cycle. I got some birds for my family and this thing took off. I saw that it had.
To be honest, I think you have to. If you would have given us $1 million 5 years ago, we would have lost $1 million 5 years ago. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know how to pick out a piece of land. We didn't know how to manage poultry in a hot climate that doesn't get a lot of rain. We didn't know anything. So this is such a steep learning curve for anybody. It just takes time and patience and a lot of hard work to really even know what we're doing. We still learn stuff every single day, and we've done several 100,000 birds in the last 5 years.
Yep. Yeah, it's awesome. And so talk to me then a little bit about how did your life that you in that career you didn't like, the accountant, how does that apply to what you're doing every day with Pastured Bird?
Well, the bottom line is you're running a business, and my brother and I both approach this as a business first, because it's easy to romanticize this thing and think about how it's so great to be outside working with the animals every day and healing soils and doing pasture. But we look at sustainability, like I always say, it's this three-legged chair. You got economic sustainability, you got ecologic sustainability, and you got legal sustainability too. So as you really try to build this into a business, you got to make sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed on the legal side too. And all these things are real important. But financially, we coming as a CPA, I think it's just so important to know your numbers, and we've really, really focused on keeping good records of stuff and knowing our numbers, knowing what's coming on the farm and leaving the farm, and how much feed are we using, and what's the profit margin, and really this is a real company, so we want to think about it that way.
And in terms of the revenue here of the farm, is it only pastured poultry, or do you have any other enterprises that you're in the process of bringing up, like
We've got
pigs or?
two businesses. So we have Pasturebird, which is just wholesale pasture poultry only.
Okay.
That's the whole business. And then we also own Primal Pastures. That was the retail brand that we started like 5 years ago. And it's morphed into doing beef, lamb, pork, pasture poultry, raw honey, all available for home delivery. But that's just our retail company. So Primal Pastures gets its chicken from Pasturebird, if that makes sense. We sort of sell it to ourselves that way.
Yep, it does. Now I'm just curious, are you raising those other products, on your farm, or are you working with other trusted producers for that Primal Pastures retail outlet?
We do lamb, pork, and chicken here on the farm. We have 2 farms now. But we do our own production on that, and then we'll do all of our beef from another farm that we have a close relationship with, and then a little bit of lamb and pork comes from other friendly farms in the area too.
Gotcha.
And that's another thing that's really allowed us to grow. So we couldn't have jumped ship and focused on this thing full time if we had to produce every single thing we sold, and that was a tough decision for us when we started looking at bringing other things in. But not coming from a farm background, we literally capitalized the business with $500 each between 4 guys, $2,000, and we said we're not going to take bank loan, we're not going to take any debt, we're just going to make this 2,000 grow into whatever it's going to grow into. And so there was no cattle that was going to come from that. It wasn't
right.
It wasn't in the cards for us. So
yep, yeah, that's wonderful. I think personally, one of the biggest challenges, and then we're all, I think, have a guilty tendency to want to do this, but that I got to jump in and I got to have pork, beef, lamb, chicken, whatever the case is, you got to have it all. But more and more, I think that approach you just laid out is a much more sane and probably profitable approach than trying to do everything and mastering none of them.
Absolutely. I mean, the more now, 5, almost 6 years into this, we're almost pulling back and we're saying, hey, if we're going to really, really make an impact in the industry at large, we need to pick something and be really the best at it, be focusing on that full time. So for us, pastured poultry was that choice, but we thought hard about doing pastured pork or some other kind of livestock. It was just, in this industry, like many, you need to pick one thing to kind of be an expert at if you want to be economically sustainable.
Cool. Now let's shift it up a little bit here, Paul. And so we've established the growth curve here, and it's pretty steep. So if I could get you just to reflect on one of the biggest challenges that you've encountered, growing your Primal Pastures into Pasturebird over the past couple years, what was that challenge? One of the what I'm talking about, the typical low point of like, oh crap, I can't believe that just happened.
I was just telling somebody about this the other day. It's funny. So there was a point about a year in where I still didn't know if this was going to work or not. So we had lost about 90% of our flock to predation. We have a huge coyote population out here. Our bank account had sort of dwindled down. I remember being at Home Depot and I had to buy some zip ties because we used to do all of our own processing on farm. And we had $5 in the account, and we all promised to each other, the whole family, that we're not going to put any more money into this thing. And if it fails, it fails. And I remember going to swipe my card for these zip ties, and it got declined. And I was just thinking, man, is this the end of the road kind of thing? And by the grace of God, really, I believe, but also because we got lucky, we added some livestock guardian dogs in, and we quelled the predation thing completely. We were able to bounce back from that, but it was a really touch and go for quite some time back then.
How did you pull yourself out of that? Was it just getting the predation under control, and how did you realize that dogs were the answer?
Predation was a huge problem for us in the beginning, and for me, I'm a former military. I was trained as a sniper commander in the Marine Corps, and so my first reaction was just go set up a blind and start taking these things out. But the more we studied it, it came to be pretty obvious that if you take out too many coyotes that are in your territory, whatever predators controlling your territory, all that does is open up a power vacuum, and now you got even more predators coming onto your property. And so we learned about these dogs. I mean, just at the nick of time, we got a few dogs and we got them onto the ranch, and we run a livestock guardian mix that's a Great Pyrenees and an Anatolian Shepherd. Probably got 25 dogs that we work with now. And we haven't lost a single animal to a predator in 3 or 4 years. I mean, it totally saved our business.
Yeah, that's awesome. The dogs, that is like the go-to defense in the pastured space. You know, I'm really happy to hear that. That's great. You recognizing you have a problem. Of course, it's pretty easy to recognize you don't have a problem when you can't buy your zip ties. But then
well, sometimes that's too late, though. You know.
Yeah.
And then another thing we did is we sort of got to the point where we said, hey, I don't like these Joel Salatin coops. You know, let's just open them up and do a day range system and run the electronetting and stuff. And that was a big mistake for us. Not that it doesn't work for other people. That's fine. But for us, we just lost track of the birds. The flock started getting mixed. It would be hard for us to tell exactly how many birds were supposed to go to processing. And then we wouldn't even know we had a problem until the birds were processed. We said, well, we ordered 100 chicks. Why do we only put 20 birds into the freezer? You know, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And by then, you're too late to make a decision. So going back to the Salatin systems, a coyote can still dig underneath that pen, no problem. But at least you can see pretty clearly when something happened, and you can make a pretty quick decision.
Let's pause real quick so I can tell you about our sponsor, Henlight. Henlight provides a fully automated, solar-powered, supplemental lighting system for your pastured flock. The chicken math is simple. As the amount of daylight decreases, the amount of eggs from the flock also decreases. Pastured poultry farmers have hacked together their own mobile solution to this problem over the years. But Henlight packages a unit that's reliable and easy to use and comes with a money-back guarantee. Henlight is backed with research into the best light wavelengths to maximize both animal welfare and production. Many customers report a 25% increase in lay after implementing a Henlight system. You can take a dive into the technology when I speak with Henlight's co-founders on Pastured Poultry Talk Episode 6. Henlight is available in sizes for both the market-sized pastured flock and the backyard family flock, and I've got mine on the way. Check out henlight.com for details. That's HENLIGHT.com, and tell them Mike Badger at Pastured Poultry Talk sent you. So let's jump to the other side here and talk about, if you would, what you think has been one of the most valuable improvements or innovations that you've come up with or used in your farm, in your pastured poultry business.
Well, just going back to shelter design and stuff like that, we're blessed to have Grady from Cobb Creek thinking about these problems on a scale like we are, and we've leveraged his mobile range coop real heavily out here. We're running about 30 of them right now, and we love that design. It's definitely a warm weather, flat pasture kind of large scale system, so it's 720 square feet. It's like 36 by 20 houses, 500, 600 birds in there, and it's meant for daily move kind of situation. And we do a couple things to modify it for the real hot, dry weather that we get here, but that's been so much more efficient, saving people's backs. It allows us to get in there and stand up all the way, and so we're sort of doubling down on the mobile range coop right now, and he's got them available if anybody's interested in moving. You know, I think once you've got 12, 15 Joel Salatin pens going, you kind of know what I'm talking about, but it's just a lot of work moving those things every day.
Right.
And doing the feed and doing the water and everything else for them. And you can just really streamline with a bigger system. But another thing that we did from early on is we set up a Google form that our farm hands fill out every single day. It goes through, you know, how many birds you find mortalities that day, how many inches of rain came down. It's got every single piece of data that we could possibly want, and keeping tight records has been huge for us to be able to make decisions and go back, and we can say, hey, you know, when we lost these 30 birds over the course of that week, what were the temps like? What was the rain like? What were we doing? Where were they at? But just to have that data all, you know, electronic, it's instantly downloaded to a big spreadsheet, and I'm a big nerd with that stuff, so it's real helpful.
Yeah. And they use that on their phone?
They all just use it on their iPhones, and so a little Google, it's a little link that they open up, and it's pretty user-friendly.
I'm going to ask you to kind of think about this in more of a broader picture, if you will, but and just in a sentence or two, give me what you see as the biggest obstacle to pastured poultry. Like specifically, I'm thinking about the mainstream adoption of pastured poultry in the marketplace. Like,
it's scale without a doubt. I mean, some of the listeners are going to come on and they're going to hear that we're doing 150,000 birds and think that we're huge, or, you know, just massive. It's almost mind-boggling numbers when you're doing 500 birds a year or whatever like that, 50 birds a year. the reality is a small niche poultry processor that's in the grocery store and stuff like that, they're killing 100,000 birds a day, and that's a small player. So to even compare us or to consider us in the same industry as these guys, when we're going up and trying to price our products against them, it's almost laughable, from a business perspective. So I think that scale needs to happen in this industry. We've got to figure out solutions that'll work on a larger scale, whether that means moving into 500,000 birds a year or 500 million birds a year. I don't know, but I do think that with the right minds, sharp, bright minds coming up and thinking about these problems at a large scale, we can provide a real alternative to factory farming. It's something that's, again, good for the land, animal, and consumer, and get away from this production system that just does not work. The grow house model, manure lagoons, super bugs, antibiotic resistance, it's going to fall in on itself, and we've got to be there as a community with real solutions, I think, to be able to provide an alternative.
Yeah, well said. I think we need more people to be looking, not necessarily, I don't think, to where you are, but we need more people to get from wherever they're at to somewhere along that continuum. We do need we need to scale it up as a community, I think is my macro level.
But education is a huge part of that too. So as much as I know that give it 20 years or give it 30 years, but eventually, factory poultry farms are not going to be, they're just not sustainable system. You're going to get an avian flu. You're going to get some bug that's going to come and wipe out too many, and it's going to become a big problem. But in the meantime, we need consumers, we need educators, we need people out there telling the message and explaining the differences between free range and pasture raised. And when you go and see those things on the shelf next to each other, and pasture raised is an extra $1 over free range, what is that? What's the difference there?
Right.
We need a lot of education in this space too.
More information will be coming very, very soon, but we have some of that information, some of that marketing coming out through APA.
Awesome.
To help. We'll need people like you to drive that message, but we're providing some background information that'll help with that, we hope. So what's the future look like for Pasturebird? You guys, have any special projects going on? Any plans, any vision that you want to share?
Well, we've got a 100-acre project going right now. We're going to be working our way up to 6,000 birds a week, and that's really the track that we're on right now. We're building up some really great accounts. We just started working with Wolfgang Puck out here in California, and we've got some other big guys in the hopper that are excited, and there's just a lot of excitement and momentum around the whole pasture poultry movement, and we like to be that solution down here in Southern California. But more than that, we really feel blessed. We're all Christians, on this farm, and we feel really blessed that we've got to have these opportunities so far, and we've been able to share some stuff down in Haiti. That's something that we're really excited about. We have a pasture poultry project happening in central Haiti right now up on the plateau, and just went down there and helped them build some coops that are suitable for their climate down there, real tropical and rainy, kind of crazy climate, and did some training with local farmers down there, and we're trying to get that program off the ground too. So that's a real exciting thing for us as well.
Speaking of Haiti, do you know Nick Stolberg of New Roots Haiti?
We've been talking to him. So he's doing a really cool pasture poultry project in northern part of the island. And we've been next time I'm down there, I'm definitely going to meet up with him because he's doing some really cool stuff.
Yeah, and he's an APA member now, and I just actually talked with him because he's relatively new. He's just starting up, so I was kind of curious about what he was doing. So I talked to him in the previous podcast episode, just kind of getting the lay of what his project is and from the mission side of it.
Well, there's a lot happening in missions right now, and just in the mindset, documentaries like Poverty Inc. and learning how to help people instead of hurting with our giving. That's been real influential to us. So we're trying to be really strategic about not just going down and giving people chicks. How do we go down and how do we help them build systems? How we help them change their mindset of these men that have been given subsidized, U.S. rice for their whole lives. They haven't had to really work, to wanting to work and wanting to take pride in producing some product off their land. And how can that change a community? It's more than just chicken. It's a lot more than that. And it's really an opportunity for us to get down there and show them, the grace of God, and that He's been able to show us these things and be able to share that with them too. Yeah,
and one of the things we talked about was the it's so easy for us here in the States to think about all the negative impacts that the modern poultry industry has had on our food system and just how much it's degraded it. But it's really, that doesn't stay contained to our shores. That they export that misery to to places like Haiti and other countries, and with cheap poultry products and
absolutely
the confinement poultry model. So it's we're battling it here, but they've got a stronghold in that conventional thinking throughout the world, and it's pretty hurtful.
Well, I'll just plug, if you ever get a chance to go and share your craft as a pasture poultry farmer, and you see these guys, especially the men. I really love that part of it. You see the men, their eyes light up the first time they've really produced something, and you just see that pride of like, I personally watched over this animal. I got it to slaughter, and then you see them put that on the table for their family. There's nothing that'll change your heart than that. I mean, that's a pretty cool experience to be able to see that firsthand.
Yeah, awesome. Hopefully you can send me some, if you have it, if your group in Haiti is doing something, I'd love to check in with that and just follow it and see where that goes. I love that project.
Well, there is a global sort of pasture poultry nonprofit that's out there too that you're semi-involved with as well, right?
Yeah, that's the Global Poultry Institute with Jim Atkins.
Right, there you go.
Yep, that's who's, and that's a relatively young group, but it's kind of finding its way and in the work, and there's a lot of demand for what that group's offering, which is primarily they're looking at standard breed,
right,
heritage type of birds is where he focuses at, but which is a noble effort too. But there's at short term, there's room for all of that. Just raising.
Well, what I'll say is that pasture poultry farmers, in my experience, are really, really good people. And as we have more folks that are successful, you're going to see a lot of people wanting to give back. And I just hope that we can all share lessons learned and best practices and stuff to make sure our efforts and our funds and time and everything else that we put into these communities is fruitful and as effective as possible.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, to me, Paul, I think when I think about this, and when I was talking to Nick, when I hear you talk about that project in Haiti, when I think about what I was doing in Cameroon, that idea of self-sufficiency, of just being able to take care of yourself, that's an idea that just transcends culture, transcends
Absolutely.
Borders. That's a human dignity kind of thing. And when you empower somebody to be able to raise their own food, and it happens here in the States too every day, people, once they discover the freedom that they can raise their own food and it can be different and exactly what they want, and detach themselves in some small way, I mean, that's an awesome experience.
Well, poverty is not a number, it's a mindset. And when you can help to do any small thing to change that mindset, that you can be productive, you can go out and do something for yourself, it's a cool thing to be a part of.
Cool. Well, we got a little sidetrack there, but I like that conversation. That's a good topic. Couple quick ones here for you. I want to know, along your entire spectrum, you're in the Marine Corps, you're an officer, you're an accountant, you're a farmer now, man of the world, man of God. What has been, if you had to single it out, the best piece of advice that you've ever been given that kind of helps you get through your days?
I mean, the fourth leg of that stool, I was talking about economic, ecologic, legal sustainability. I think social sustainability is maybe the most important. So I love what I do. I'm borderline workaholic a lot of times. I can spend 100+ hours a week, every single week, doing my craft and perfecting it. And my wife has always been very good to help pull me away from that. Remember that I've a lot more important things going on, with family and church, and just to keep things in perspective at all times has probably been the single most important thing for me. Close second to that is going to a USDA slaughterhouse that I don't have to manage. So that's my best two pieces of advice.
Awesome. So here's a challenge for you. And this actually relates to something that you brought up earlier. So you mentioned your partners all started with $500 each. So if I plopped you down on a farm right now with $500 in your pocket, you had, all the knowledge and experience that you have now, $500, but you had no poultry business. How would you get that poultry business to be profitable?
Well, pretty easy. I would honestly go pretty close to what we actually did. So I take about as close to zero as possible and build my first coop out of recycled materials. Doesn't have to be pretty. Joel Salatin says don't use anything, we don't even use tape measures with less than an inch marking on them. I would get that built for as cheap as possible. I would get my chicks and my feed up. I'd probably figure out somewhere to borrow some processing equipment from. And every single last dollar that I had left over, I'd invest in marketing, packaging, making the product look real good and get the word out to different folks. But it's kind of, you wouldn't think it intuitively, but I would want 300 of that 500 going into marketing and packaging.
Okay. Simple and sweet. Any final thoughts?
Well, I just think there's a importance in this industry to doing things, and it's real easy to sit around and read the forums all day and buy books and browse the internet, but there's nothing that will replace just pulling the trigger. And sometimes it doesn't feel too good and you pay the price, but I think if you think of it all as a learning experience, nothing can replace on-the-job learning and just trying new things. None of us know what we're doing. I'm sitting here, maybe one of the top 10% or whatever of producers in the country, and I don't know exactly what I'm doing. We learn new stuff and we try new things every single day on the farm. So I don't want it to seem like we've got it all figured out, or we really, we've learned a lot, but there's still so much to learn. And that usually comes through trying new things on the farm, not necessarily through reading books and doing other things like that. So I'm a big shoot then point guy.
That fits with your military experience. Well, I guess probably it didn't work out so well there. If you would shoot then point with your, but so yeah, awesome. Thanks, Paul. I enjoyed it. Great conversation. We could probably go on and on, but we're going to have to probably cut it here. Where can we learn more about Pasturebird, and how can we get a hold of you if we wanted to?
Yeah, just pasturebird.com. We're on Instagram and Facebook too. We try to update every couple days on there. And then our retail brand, Primal Pastures, we also share a lot of information there about all the different kinds of livestock that we do. And then we didn't even talk about that, but retail is a whole other beast. And if you're in California, Arizona, Nevada, so the Southwest region, we've got product delivered straight to your doorstep. So that's a whole nother podcast. We can talk about all that.
Well, everybody, that's going to wrap us up for this episode of Pastured Poultry Talk. Thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for listening. As always, I want your feedback. I need it. That's the way we move forward here. Pastured Poultry Talk is the Facebook group you can join, or shoot me an email, mike@pasturedpoultrytalk.com. You can find my home base at pasturedpoultrytalk.com. It has all the show episodes, the archives, all 50 previous episodes. I highly encourage them. Great listening. With that, see you next week.